Hello, everyone. This is another Freedom to Feel conversation, and my guest today is Dr. Christine Silverstein. She's a peak performance coach, founder of the Summit Center for Ideal Performance. She's a behavioral health registered nurse, a clinical hypnosis expert. Dr. Christine, she's also a researcher, published historian, and the best-selling author of Wrestling Through Adversity, empowering children, teens, and young adults to win in life. So, this, as always, my brief introduction to all my guests. A question that I love asking. I already asked Christine so many times. This is the fifth time we are meeting, so I won't ask you that question again, Christine, about who are you in your own words. So, I'll put that aside. But the topic today is how to get in the zone and win with mind power. And that relates to chapter 5 in Christine's book. Your mind is an amazing place to live. So before we dive in into the subject, I have 3 questions for you, Christine. Those are opening questions. So might sound very similar to some of the questions that I have asked before, but what is your why for doing interviews like this and for doing what you do for so many years? Did that change over time? Did the why evolve in some way?
Yes, it absolutely did. Starting off on my new journey when I decided to um, build a business to help my children to help themselves, and I was really interested in first teaching my children what they needed to know because they were becoming teenagers and had all kinds of issues
Yeah.
with being a teenager and emotional and hormonal changes, and also they were involved in sports and performing arts, and I saw that um, they had these challenges, but there was no real way to help them to help themselves. I reached out to some people in some programs, and it wasn't what I expected because I wanted them to learn to help themselves. I wanted them to be independent. And so that message was very strong when say for instance, my son, who was a wrestler, he was in high school, and he had, in the practice previous to the state championship, he had developed an asthma attack, an allergic reaction to something he ate. He tried to make weight by having a salad, and it was from a fast food place. And unfortunately, he didn't know it. It had poppy seeds in it. He's allergic to poppy seeds. So right there, in one of the practices before the competition, he started to wheeze, and he had the worst asthma attack he's had in his life. And then he tried to overcome that, but it led to his having to take a nebulizer that he never used before and a big machine to aerate
Ah,
his lungs that we had to bring to the state championship, you know. And and so I watched them down there on the mat. I'm up in the stands, and it's in New Jersey, in Atlantic City, and I see him having these challenges with the breathing and using this inhaler. You cannot use an inhaler too often. It's dangerous. And I know he's struggling, and he's not using the skills because everybody expected him to win. He had a big weight on his shoulders, and they didn't consider that he had this allergic reaction. So at any rate, he's down there, and I'm feeling very helpless up there in the stands, and I don't know what to do, to help him. And then people put bets on him that he would win, and there's a lot of pressure. So right then and there, I said, I'm learning what to do to help my
mm,
son. That was one fact. And also I elected to send him to another school that had better coaching. It was better for him right then and there too, to get him into this other school, a private school. So that was one instance for me, and it related directly to my children. And then another one was my daughter, who was a gymnast. She was in a competition, and she had grown a lot from this 5.5 size shoe to like almost a 9 in a very short period of time. And her legs grew very long, and relative to the rest of her body, because she was a teenager. And so I see her in a competition, and she gets all tangled up in the bars. And that was her favorite event. So the uneven parallel bars. So I watched her, and she even fell off the apparatus, which was not likely for her. And I knew that she felt terrible. And so she had to learn how to operate with a taller body, for instance. And I remember my son, maybe not charitably back then, but telling her that 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 she was dragging her feet on the mat, coming around on the bars, and that the coach was going to have to burrow a hole, like a channel, for her to bring her legs through. Of course, that upset her when
Yeah.
she heard her brother's comment. But at the same time, she did need to adjust, and that's true with all gymnasts when they start developing big chest, breast, and they have to be on the balance beam, and and it might be over a short period of time. So anyway, that was one of the things that said, okay, but what's happening psychologically, and how can I help her? So I need to find out what to do for her. And now I brought one of my children to a psychologist, um, and I came out with that. From the psychologist telling me that I was the one who needed therapy, because I don't know what was told to this psychologist. And I said, that's it. I have to figure out what to do myself. So that was from the very beginning my motivating factor. Although I was always oriented towards how people feel, and have very good skills as a nurse, interpersonal relations. So I was primed for it. And then I was invited by a friend to study hypnotism, and I had already used it for my fertility issues. I had 4 miscarriages, and the doctors told me that I would never hold a baby in my arms unless I took this really horrible drug that caused cancer in offspring, DES. And I said to myself, this is, years prior, obviously, when I was younger. And I said, if I have to do that, then I won't have children. I'll adopt, because I
Right.
felt so strongly about it. And so then I used meditation, and I also used self-hypnosis. And I had 4 children, after that. So there goes the infertility diagnosis that was unexplained, all those years later, because I learned how to get in what I call now a fertility conscious zone, right? And the only other thing that I changed was to look at my supplements and my diet to see how I can improve, to take folic acid and other things that they knew at the time were necessary for a successful pregnancy. So I didn't have challenges becoming pregnant. I had challenges maintaining the pregnancies, which caused me so much grief and hardship. But I overcame it. And so I knew when my friend said, let's
Yeah.
take this, study hypnotism. I said, well, maybe this is applicable, and maybe this could help me to help my children. So that's how I started. And I still have this desire to work with this age group because they're wonderful to work with. I love working with children, teenagers, and young adults. And they're primed to learn and to grow, um, by through the models of parents, teachers, coaches like that, but also to learn what they have to do for themselves, and we can teach them so much. So it really bothers me that in this society we don't appreciate children, we don't care for them, we use them as pawns rather than
Right.
showing them what to do. And so I'm so glad that I started that journey years ago. I started with learning what to do for myself. and there's some of the things I learned during my fertility journey, but also learn how to talk to myself, how to talk to my children, how to be the role model, correct something that's negative. It's like, I'm going to lose this match or whatever, and change it. We were talking before about how words are important. And then and they started to improve, and I reached out to other people, like other members of the team for my children. I work with gymnasts and wrestlers and track. I worked with all these different sports early on from the very first day I opened my office. And also, I branched out then from there because the word got around, and I branched out to reach out to other schools. I work with whole teams from there, and it started to spread the good news. There's something you can do to help your children. And parents often call me and they say, I don't know what to do now. And you have a teenager. I used to be so close. We used to be able to talk. So I learned techniques. They
Yeah.
worked for my children, and they're portable. So when you're a child, you can know that what you learn, how to defend yourself in the schoolyard from a bully, you can take that same skill and defend yourself in the boardroom, when you're a business person. So these are portable and they're life skills and very important. And we don't focus on that. Instead, in our society, we focus on therapy after the fact. Now, your child is in the emergency room, ready to, try to commit suicide and maybe harm themselves before they got there, and there are no programs. So that adds to it now, where we don't have the mental institution anymore, where we used to put people far away from us, and some of them would enter as children and stay there all through their lives as adults. And I know that because I witnessed that as a student nurse many years ago. So, because I met people there, patients there who had been there for so long, and now they didn't know how to leave. So we don't have that anymore in the same way, but we're not teaching our children what to do, and it can start at a very early age, just to help them to know what to say, know what to do. So we need to start somewhere, and it's best infancy, but you can always pick up. And as I said, with the development of a child's brain, they love to use their imagination, and also the teenagers especially, because their brains are developing special links between the left and right side of the brain hemispheres. The skull isn't growing by teenage years, but the connections are growing, the links are growing, and that allows them to use the skill sets that I work with, like mental rehearsal, using metaphors, images, because of this extensive connecting um, um, neurons from the left to the right brain and back and forth. So that's the prime time. And everybody, most people in this society say, oh, teenagers are such a problem. And how people say to me, how could you want to work with teenagers? Isn't it hard? And these are even professional people, right? And
Yeah.
I went to this one seminar. It was in a local library, and the psychiatrist from a local hospital was giving it, and he was calling this the title, "The Amazing Teen Brain." Right. So I went to it as a guest, and I was sitting there with the group of parents. Mostly mothers, but some fathers. The whole place, the whole library was filled with parents. And this psychiatrist, he starts off saying, because the name of it was The Amazing Brain, he said, I know, that we think that teenagers have brains, but that's an oxymoron, he said, because
Wow.
they don't really look at the crazy things they do. They don't have a brain. And then the parents, they were saying, oh my goodness, they didn't know what to think, right? So I had my brochure there, Winning Ways for Teens, and I was trying to distribute them, and they said I couldn't distribute material unless it was approved. But I did wait outside the building after it was over, and I said, so here's my brochure, because they were shocked. They didn't know what to do. And everything he just discussed, all the trouble they get into with teen pregnancies, and car accidents and criminality and all these things. He listed, and then he's telling the audience that they don't have brains to fix it and that they need therapy. So I was very upset by that, and I know through my work, and at that time, this was maybe 10 years ago, that there is something you can do. And I know that through my work that I started when I watched my children, empathize with them and learned what to do, how to help them. And then many hundreds of wrestlers and gymnasts and other athletes that I've helped along the way, because they trust you once they know, and they say, especially teenagers that say, why didn't anybody tell me this before? It's so simple, using the power of your mind. And when they succeed, they're just so happy. And it translates not just to the sport or the event. Like my one of my daughters played the piano, so it's not just for the performing arts, because they're portable skills. So then you see them doing well in school. You see them on the honor roll for the first time, and they're more sociable and they have more friends and all of these things, because you can use these everywhere you go and anywhere you go. And once you start integrating them into your life, it's easy to use them. I call them portable skills, wherever you are. And that's how it builds resilience, because we have to face adversity. And in sports, it's controlled adversity, because you have rules and regulations, on the baseball field, or even with piano, you have to stay with the beat of the music. There's some rules about what's a B or a B flat, etc. Um, but the idea is that we have to face adversity, and how do you do it if you don't learn it, when you're younger? And so we know that adversity is the best teacher. But if you don't have the tools, you could be bullied in the schoolyard. And then many of these people who turn into terrorists, they have been bullied early on in their lives and have adverse childhood experiences. And they even use that, and talk about it before they go out and they do this major damage, with gun violence. So it's so interesting. You can prevent that. And I say better to um, have somebody become an engineer or a teacher rather than a terrorist, that we can actually do something about it, even though people are throwing their hands up and saying we don't know what to do. Well, I believe I do, and it's called building resilience and wrestling through adversity. And I know I've used that in my life as well. Um, Although on the fourth pregnancy, it was my fourth pregnancy, I had 3 miscarriages, and I had to sleep on this mattress that I knew underneath was blood stained, and I put a cover over it, but you still know it's there. It's kind of like what we were talking about before. You can gloss over something and you think, are you handling it fine? And then you realize you're not. In that case, I wasn't sleeping at night. So it's unveiling that and being able to handle it, and then say, I know what to do, and feeling confident. And it's built over the course of time. Of course, when you have young children, you help your child to build it, and by the time they're teenagers, they begin to do it themselves. You have to leave them room to grow. They're going to make mistakes, and that's another thing with teenagers. They say, oh, look how ridiculous they're acting, because they don't have the development of the brain. The right side of the brain develops faster than the reasoning side of the brain, and that's why they get into all these issues. But you can develop earlier if you apply them like to something like a sport, and that's been proved scientifically to promote sports for that reason.
Yes. How would a child defend himself, herself, without getting upset, without raging, without hurting others? That's one of the things that's very important to me
Hmm.
after I have learned that myself, that I would come from a place after learning that I'm already enough. It's actually that happened naturally because I didn't have to think about it anymore. It's just whatever triggers I have, it's the feelings that come with it. It's just so one that holds me, kind of this is this very solid ground feeling that this is already a complete experience in a sense of being me,
Right.
being
Hmm.
here. And then the relationship I have with so many people and however they unfold, it's just something that's happening. So it's easier for me now than it was before. But coming from your understanding, Christine, how to deal with defending oneself as a child and a teenager.
Well, of course it does. It does follow through from your lived experience as a child, and your parents who are role models, at least they're supposed to be role models in a positive way. A lot of parents don't know themselves, but many do. From my experience, they want to help their children. They just don't know what to do.
Right.
Part of that as a parent is to look at yourself and to look at back in your life and to see where your vulnerabilities are. And in the case of sports, I've experienced, as I said, I work with many athletes and young athletes, and sometimes the parents are saying, "But I was this when I was younger, and my son has to be the same," or they didn't achieve their success, and so now they're pushing that off onto their child. So it's a matter of, especially when they're now teenagers, they're already teenagers and they're lacking these skills,
Yeah.
you have to learn to trust them and they have to learn to trust themselves. But what does that mean? It's like when you hand the keys over to your teenager who just got his license, what does that mean? It's a responsibility, right, to take care of themselves in the car. And so that's too late to say, oh, here, you can be responsible. It has to be before that. Um,
Yeah.
so, so the
Yeah.
idea is that I use this example. Say, to somebody comes into my office, and very much they might be the father of a wrestler who wants his son to be the state champion, and they haven't really built up their skill level to that. And they don't have confidence. So, at any rate, the first session, I always talk about. Okay, so soon your son, he's 16, he might be in the driver's seat literally soon, and you're going to have to hand over these keys. So what will you do? But also, I talk about the shoes. I talk about, well, and especially if the mother's there, I'll say, so this is the new school year, and is your son going to wear the same sneakers that he wore last year? And did you buy him new shoes? And so, of course, I bought him new shoes. His foot grew 2 sizes, right? That's always the
Yeah.
response. So I say, oh, that's great. And sometimes if we try to fit a shoes in, fit in smaller shoes, it hurts, right? It's not going to be great. But literally, that's how your child could be feeling right now, that he's afraid to grow, because what will happen if he loses? What will happen if he won't achieve the success that you're saying he must achieve? And so it's like wearing these shoes that are too small. So right from the very beginning, I talk about these shoes, and I say, so you would buy a bigger size, right? And then they could grow into them. That's fine. So when they're feeling comfortable with their performance, they might say, Dad, my shoes are feeling just right now. I'm glad with my performance, like that. Or to say, at times they might feel like they have clown shoes on, big floppy shoes, and they don't know what to do. So in that case, they need to say, I'm flopping around a little bit. Could you help me out? But if they're feeling like they're too tight, there's no growth. And other people, say other opponents, will continue to grow, but you won't. You'll be afraid to use your skills. Your father might be looking at you in practice and criticizing you afterwards, and why aren't you doing this and that? And so then they're not going to grow. And even if the parents are going to be in the back seat drivers for the rest of their lives because they're not
Right.
allowing their children to grow. So that's a metaphor for how to handle, wrestle through adversity, literally, on the mat, but also to prepare and then to give them that room to grow, even if they're the floppy clown shoes that they're wearing on the wrestling mat and tripping over their feet. They need to learn this and grow into this in order to be competitive in the world, right? So you can say, now you're 18, and we do this very often. Now you're an adult, you're a young adult. the day after you turn from 17 to 18, now you're an adult and you're responsible. As an adult, you can get put in jail. If you are with your girlfriend, sleep with your girlfriend, and she gets pregnant, you can put in jail if your girlfriend's only 16. And so things change, and he could get arrested, and this and that. And so that's too late. And in our society, we send our young adults, and this, I think, is the most neglected group, because you cannot find many books about it, how to help your children. And by then they're in college or they're off on their own, so you don't have the jurisdiction you had. But now they're floundering around and they don't know what to do. But we might even put guns in their hands and say, go off to war, and their brains aren't even fully developed yet, and
Yeah.
that's a casualty right there. And I know, when I went down to the Vietnam Memorial in Lower Manhattan, they had all the ages of all the military people who died, and they were 18 and 19 and 20. It was so sad to me to think that they were putting them in these precarious positions because of the violence in the world, and we want to overtake this or that, and we literally put guns into the hands of our children before they're even ready to have, the executive functioning to handle it, and know what to do with it. And guns in the sense of real guns, or just um, a danger to their future, because they don't know how to handle life. And so that's why I say start young and learn yourself what to do,
Right.
and to be aware. It's like why you would react in a certain way, like we were talking about before, something from the past and it's triggered, and you're not even aware. But fortunately, it doesn't mean you're going to go home and get your gun and go to a school and shoot up the place. So it's very interesting to me. It depends on how you look at it and how you value children in society. And the Gen Zs, who are from like 26 to about 12 years old, they're calling the whole generation the lost generation. And that's very sad to me, because we're not using their potential or ours for economic purposes or any other purpose, in the future when they're going to be running the country. And so we have to teach them skills, and we have to listen to what they're saying, and we have to put ourselves in their shoes. So what are they thinking? Why are they protesting here, on the college campuses, and understand, and then help them to communicate to older generations, and then the older generations have to talk to them, so that we can work on the same level and be respectful of each other. But if it doesn't happen, then there's all this criticism, and you don't have the skill. Why not teach young adults in college arbitration skills, how to negotiate right then and there? That's a good opportunity. Teach them what to say, what to do, and to look at both sides, for diplomacy, things like that. That's really a great time, but we don't use
Yeah.
that either. And we notice, if we look at the statistics, that the second leading death of college students is suicide. So you put that into perspective, and it's already a disaster, when you think about it. And why is that happening? Perhaps they didn't learn skills to cope in life.
Yeah. Yes. A billion times. Yes. Pretty much everything that you said, except competition, being competitive. And that could have different meanings, right?
So we talked about that in the last session, about redefining success. It doesn't mean that you're going to win every competition.
Right.
Matter of fact, that puts pressure on you, like my son felt at that wrestling competition when he had an allergic response and he was turning blue, on the mat. So competition. See, the purpose of when you participate in a sport, that's just for fun. But once you put the word competition, then you win or you
Yes.
lose. But the winning and the losing, it varies. Like somebody might win a bronze medal at the Olympics and not the gold that they wanted, but they're happy with the bronze. You see what I'm saying? Or they're happy just competing at the Olympics and not winning anything. Um, everything is relative in how you look at it. And so it's the competition, that's the truth of living in this world. You think there's no competition, is in the first grade, they're already sizing you up for your intelligence and what classes you're going to be taking and what special programs you're going to be in, because you're so smart, and then leave other people behind. And also, by the time you get to eighth grade, what courses will you take? How will you be geared to, should you go to college? And they're already sizing you up in your grades and your testing, and they know everything about you. So if you think that there's no competition, there is.
Right.
And so you have to be prepared for it. But there's such a thing as healthy competition. And you can also say, well, I didn't win this time, but let me put it on a feedback loop that I teach my clients. And you do that objectively. It's not subjective. So what do I have to do to improve the next day on this math test that I'm taking? What do I have to study, but I have to do these other things. And I have to think that I'm really smart in math, rather than maybe the teacher said, you're the dumbest person in math. That's like what happened to me in high school. My teacher actually put us in the rows in the classroom according to our midterm grade. And then she told everybody in the class who was the smartest, first row, first seat, and who was the dumbest, last row, last seat, which I happened to be sitting in, you know, and it was horrible. And I had
Yeah.
this really mental block to think I was dumb in math until I got to college, and I excelled in it. It wasn't me. It was the way the teacher taught me. I'm a visual learner, and she taught me with literally a big stick, right? And would bang it on the floor, and we'd have to repeat our homework, A plus B equals C. And as I said, I'm not an auditory learner, so it was devastating. But I did help myself to get A's in math and chemistry and science by the time I got to Columbia University, and I graduated with honors. But it was tough in high school because I had the same teacher for 3 years.
Right.
So that's competition there. And I think back, oh my goodness, I'm lucky I had my friend Rosemary, who was in the third seat in that classroom, and she could help me with my homework, so I get the right answers. So looking
Yeah.
back, I'm so grateful for her. I'm still in contact with her. Yes. Mhm.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, friends, isn't it the best thing?
Yes,
And we know them by those in those situations when we most need. They just appear, they show
that's
up
right.
with right that
Mhm.
helpful presence. Yes. So one of the things that come to mind immediately is when we are children, we have this tendency of looking at the outer world and for references of how we should feel, how we should think. So we are so open to the input and the inputs, and that creates a lot of confusion.
Yes, it does. It does because, well, when we're children, we don't think like adults, even though we say, "Oh, why doesn't the teenager think like an adult?" Because they're not. They're not children either. But even a young child, they have the different perspectives. Like I was telling you earlier about my
Yes.
daughter and how I scared her about the pinworms, biting her fingernails. So, but that's the idea that they perceive things differently, and and we don't understand that, and we may never understand that. So we have to be very careful with that. But the idea is that they accept things like a sponge. Children just absorb it. And also, we're, as parents, we're responsible for inputting positive mindsets into our children, and we don't always do that, and we put them down, and then they're not able to express themselves. So it's very important to be involved, and you may have good intentions. Like I was telling you, I told my daughter if she bit her nails, she could get pinworms,
Yeah.
and I didn't know how it upset her too many years later, but she did stop biting her nails, and it was medical knowledge I was sharing with her as a nurse. Because the fact is, you can, and you can look it up today to verify the fact, right? But that's their perception, and then when you're older, you have to change that perception, even if you've had these adverse experiences, you have to start changing that perception. And it is in some countries a practice where they use sports for that. In Wales, they use sports, and they have a whole program where they're trying to help children who have had adverse childhood experiences and help them to heal, and also to prevent them through the use of
Right.
sports, because and it's all community and everybody helps one another. And that's a beautiful thing. I wish we had more of that in this country. It's focused on helping young people to reduce the criminality and to reduce the drug addiction and all the things that
Yeah.
happen, because we're not attentive to our children and satisfying their needs.
Yes. And that's the key is early prevention.
It's early. It's much harder to get over something later on if you don't have the skills, and it makes such a deep impression, and it just pops up. It pops up at certain times, and you're not even aware of it, and you don't know how to handle it. So there are skills that you can get through. Um, as I was describing to you, what I
Yeah.
use with my clients and also with myself very naturally, because I relate to metaphors and images, is the affect bridge technique. And that was used by Dr. John Watkins during World War II. He developed it later on in the 1970s. And originally, it was based on what Freud used. His first modality was hypnosis, and then he later switched to free association. But it's a cathartic method, and it's very effective and very easy to use, especially if these fears or these traumas aren't set deeply within our psyche,
Yeah.
so that they only pop up at certain times, and then we may become violent.
Right. Right. Yeah, I have interviewed lots of people here on hypnotherapy. That's one of the things. And hypnosis too, of course. I just interviewed somebody recently on self-hypnosis. Yeah, he's a psychologist. So you said something, you wrote, all hypnosis is self hypnosis, which is a self guided, self directed, and self induced.
Mhm. That's my opinion, right? That's how I've always worked with it. You you do it to yourself, so there's
Right.
no a fear of being under hypnosis or having somebody influence you, and there's no fear of getting stuck in it because you're doing it to yourself, right? So it's not under the control of another person. The way I work, I'm a facilitator, and I assist you and guide you, of course, in a positive direction, and, to help you guide you towards your goals, that you tell me you want to achieve, right? You want to be more social, you want to win something, you want to go to college, and you're thinking that you're not smart enough or something like that. Well, I can help you with that, and it's very easy when you know what to do. But
Yeah.
if you're thinking in a negative direction, then you're going to land there. If you see yourself in the negative picture, you're going to move in the direction of your dominant thoughts, because when you're working with your subconscious, there's no judgment. So you move, if it's negative, you'll move there. If it's positive, you'll move there. And no judgment is made. And most people don't understand that concept, but it is the law of attraction. You move in the direction of your dominant thoughts and pictures. And if you can just imagine yourself um, doing archery, and you have your bow and arrow and you point it towards the target, but then all of a sudden you move to the right, and you're not aiming towards the target. Well, that's where the arrow will go. Well, that's the same way when you think about your thoughts. You have to make them positive, and also your pictures, and learn how to cancel out the negative, substitute positive. And the idea that somebody can have control over you is really from entertainment. That's part of it, where we had
Yeah.
like the movies in the 1930s, Svengali, which I did see one time when I was taking a class, and and affected people for many years. Well, that was about a young girl. She was a musician, and Svengali took over her, and I know it affected my dad, because years later, when I was using hypnosis and I was trying to help my dad. He thought he was paralyzed, but he did have some numbness, but he could walk, I believed. He didn't have a severed spine. So I'm working with him, and I came to his house and I made him an audio tape. I said, Dad, here, we're gonna work on this walking, right? And I made this audio tape, and he's saying, "Oh, who tried to hypnotize you?" And I said, "Don't look at me. I don't want to look into your Svengali eyes," you know. I'm saying,
Um,
right?
yeah.
And so he used that, and many people use terms like that. That's where the fear comes in, but it's not about control. It's not mind control, like in the Manchurian Candidate, or Get Out is another one that people have fears. It's natural. It's what we do as human beings. And I say it's a natural gift from our Creator to know how to get in the zone on your own, and also to help yourself to achieve success, because it's such an easy process. And we go through this every day, and we work with the subconscious mind every day. But we all had that experience driving on a highway and not remembering when we left home, and now we're at our office, and how did we even get here? You know, you got off the highway, you made the left right turns, but you're there. And that's called highway hypnosis. And we also know, and I know this because I have a new grandson, and my daughter sends me pictures of the little baby,
Yeah.
and she sent me this text the other day, and she was upset because her son, his name is Rex, I don't know what's wrong with him. You know, nothing that I do is helping him. I had to remind her that he has very basic needs. You know, maybe he has a little gas, but but the idea was that he is, in a sense, controlling my daughter and her husband, by behaving, and he's getting his needs met. And at the same time, as parents, we use things to control our children to raise them. And it's also, of course, um, there's all this idea of, ads on TV, like medications for diabetes. And there's a song and the dance and everything about how you want to lower your A1C. And it's almost like everybody wants to get up and go get the drug. It's so much fun, but you're talking about,
Yeah.
a serious condition, in which you could lose your life, if you don't take care of it. But that's advertising. And so we're swayed, and that's hypnotic intervention right there. We just don't think of it that way.
Right. And we don't. Yeah. Some of us, right, Christina?
Well, yeah, some, like, I didn't take the pill that was DES, that
Right.
I knew caused cancer in the offspring and in the woman some years later, and that was the truth, because I have a colleague who had that experience. She's called a DES baby all these years later as an adult. Cancer of the uterus, cancer of the intestines. So yeah, there's a feeling that you have, and then you go by your intuition. So that's true. But some people, this person's mother thought that that's the only way she would have a baby, because that's what the doctor told her. And I know the doctor told me this too, when I was sitting in in the office
Yeah.
with him on the exam table. You'll never have a baby unless you take this drug. And I said, but doctor, listen, I did the research. I'm a nurse, and I know this is the case, that it could cause cancer. I know it's been used for many years. And he said, oh, I know that, but this is the only way. This is the only thing I have for you, he told me. Well, I went home and I threw away the prescription, is what I did. But her mother didn't. And she had two brothers who had issues too, from taking that drug.
Yes. Thank you for the message. I know we talked about this before too. And we're almost at the end. Oh my God, Christine, it seems like that's why we're having these meetings, because we could talk easily for 10
Yes, for
hours
a long
straight. That's
time.
for sure.
Yes.
So I want to, let's see, we talked about the mindful toughness skill sets, this is something that one of my observations when I was looking at them, and they are, you can get them that's in your book. So chapter
Yes.
5 has all the
Yes.
description in details, everything is there.
Yes.
But here, for the sake of this conversation being a brief one, so you disclose the steps. So step 1, breathing easy. And
Yes.
then
Hmm.
it's a series of deep breath. And then step 2, mental rehearsal. Step 3,
Yes.
positive self talk. And step 4, mental recall. One of the
Yes.
things that caught my attention, It's you always start with step one.
Yes, because you get in the zone that way with breathing and you slow down your respirations and you relax the muscles. That's part of breathing easy, where you have progressive muscle relaxation, particularly important for an athlete or a
Right.
musician, right? To have control over your muscles and a muscle readiness, I call it. So, yes, you do that first. And then, so that leads everything. And it also has triggers to relax, like you circle the fingers on your non dominant hand. You say the word easy as you exhale, and that becomes a trigger for you. Relax. You say that takes on new meaning. So anybody could say relax, and you say, "Oh yeah, I'm very relaxed," right? And automatically. And then, as I said, to envision yourself succeeding, what will you do when the bully in the schoolyard addresses you the next time around and your parents show you what you can
Yeah.
say and do, and then you learn from that. So that's the picture of yourself when succeeding. You're already succeeding. And then with the positive self-talk, you relax, you go into that space, and you can cancel out negative words that come to you and substitute positive, but also know how to frame the words so that they are positive, recognize when they're negative, and kind of step back from it and can't work on it, cancel out those negative words. I'm going to fail the test. I'm bad at math, right? Things like that. And then you substitute positive, and then your behavior starts to change to move in that direction. And then the mental recall is really empowering. I use that a lot with athletes, and that is recalling something from the past in which you have achieved success. And it doesn't have to be related to the thing you want to do. It could be, oh, I won the spelling bee and now I want to win a wrestling championship. It could be anything. You take that
Yeah.
and you imagine yourself back there, how you felt, what you did, and then you attach a power word. So right in the present moment, you say the power word and you're right back there. And then I've seen fantastic results with mental recall. And I use it myself, when you need a little confidence in yourself, or when you're thinking that everybody's saying to you you won't achieve success, and to be the last person, the last for a last seat in the math class. Well, I never failed math in high school, but I just didn't excel in it until I got to college. So, but that's the idea, that you can mentally recall only the positive things, not the negative things, because that's what we usually do. I failed at this. I'm bad at that. I lost that match. You need to look at what you achieved, and it can be related to anything that you felt good about.
Mm.
Re-experiencing that, and then bringing it forward and saying that power word. Like for a wrestler, it might mean states. You might say state championship, and then you're right back in that spot. And that could apply to when you're in the boardroom or when you're giving a speech later on in your life. So it's very powerful.
Yeah. And you did mention practice, practice, and practice. Yeah.
That's right, to incorporate it. And that's why if you start early in life, it's natural to you. And
Right.
also the feedback loop is essential, which I don't know if I mentioned there, but the feedback loop that I developed is objective. So you look at, so what did I do? How did I do it? How did I execute it? And how did it work is a very important part of it. Did it work, or did it partially work? What do I have to do to improve, as you go back around the feedback loop? And you look at it objectively, without emotion. You can look at, well, how was I feeling when I had 10 minutes left of that test, and I couldn't think. So you
Yeah.
think about that, but you just forgive yourself. You're very forgiving, and you just say, well, I did this, and you see in your mind doing it, and then you change it. What is it that I have to change? What do I have to feel? What do I have to think? What do I have to do? And when you change it and you keep on working on that, then you perfect it, and you do it to support yourself. And basically, that's how you achieve success in life.
Yes. And we talked about that. I think another conversation we had, the
Yes.
previous one, I believe, about success, defining and redefining success for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's really
Mm-hmm.
very important. So we are almost at the end. I want to mention your book again. So it can be found everywhere pretty much online, but I'll have the link here: Wrestling Through Adversity, Empowering Children, Teens, and Young Adults to Win in Life. And you also have the audio book version. It's already out there, right,
Yes.
Christine?
Mm-hmm.
I have the link too. And then you have a new website, drchristinesilverstein.com. and idealperformance.net. And
Yes.
then you also, I still have the offering from the last time we talked. There was the free ebook titled
Yes.
Unlocking Your Child's Potential,
Yes.
6 Game-Changing Points. So the link will be here too on the podcast notes. We have not talked about the translation to Arabic in this conversation, but do you want to update me on that?
Well, that's coming to fruition hopefully soon. It's very challenging, but
Yeah.
I have most of it translated, and then it will be published. But it's back and forth with the translation since I don't speak Arabic. That that represents a challenge, but at the same time, I'm getting a lot of support from the translator, and and enjoying the process, learning a lot
Mm, yeah.
about even the Arabic language, you know. So it's very important, especially with what's going on in Gaza in the Middle East. And I really want to get the book out there to help people through their challenges, and especially what's happening with children and teens in these areas in the Middle East. They could really use support. So that's
Yeah.
my intention, um, to help people all around the world, not just here in the US.
Yes, I love that too. And I love what you just said about it is a challenge, the process, but you enjoying the process.
Definitely, definitely. And the I was thinking the other day, where did I even get this idea from? You know, where did it come from? And then I realized it was influenced when I went to Egypt in
Ah,
2023 in January. I was very influenced there, and had a very wonderful tour guide who showed me, um, you know, the temples and places where people healed in ancient times, and everybody was taken care of, and nobody was left behind. Even those with the mental challenges, everybody was equal, and it's a beautiful
ah,
thing. And they all the
yeah.
faiths live together. The Jews, the Christians, the Muslims all lived together there in Egypt. And so that's one of the reasons why we all need to join together and work together as communities of the world.
Yeah, that's another beautiful message. Thank you so much again for your
You're
presence, for
welcome.
everything that you've been doing. I know it's so much work, but you're still out there doing all these interviews and putting, trying to get people to access this information. So it's
Yes.
really, really beautiful work. Thank you so much again. What are
Thank
you
you.
doing? Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll talk soon. We'll be in touch again, Christine. Take good
Okay.
care for now. Bye.
Bless you.